All right, everybody. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Other FIFA podcast here on French Island. The A-League season has kicked off and it started with a bang with a couple of huge games, a couple of huge crowds, which is always fantastic to talk about, and a whole bunch of different headlines that we're going to try and cover off for you guys this week, all things football related. But thankfully, I'm not alone. We're still on opposite ends of the beach. We will be together soon, I promise. But I'm here with Branson Gibson. Branson, how has your week been, mate?
Oh, it's been good. It's been good because it's been filled with A-League men content, mate. Plenty of games, plenty of highlights, mini matches, talking about results, talking about dramas on and off the pitch. It's just good to have the A-League men back. I'm happy about that. How about you?
Pretty much the same, man. I think everyone just got immediately back into their groove again of like, okay, this is the season. This is what we're going to be doing each weekend and each week for the rest of the year, which is fantastic. And like in Melbourne, particularly where we are, we went along to the season opener, Melbourne City versus Brisbane Roar. It still felt a little bit foreign. Still felt a little bit weird to be walking back on a concourse with like no mask or anything, to be able to get amongst it after a goal. Like, I think that part of it for a lot of people is going to take a little bit of time to get used to, and maybe that's why some crowds weren't as good as maybe what they could have been, and in other states they were. But just fantastic to have football back. I think the quality of the league kicked off really where it did last year. I think everyone's just super excited about it. I think the Paramount deal has like given everyone a renewed sense of confidence and a renewed kind of belief in the league itself. It's just a really exciting time of the year, Brand. Basically, Christmas came early for me.
But that's it. That's it. I loved it. It was just good to have football on the TV. We had a little bit of a treat with a couple of FFA Cup fixtures midweek as well. Round two's just around the corner. We've got the Matildas coming up. It's all just firing up. It's very exciting.
I know. We're soon enough. We're going to be in that scenario and situation where we've actually got games that we can't get to, as opposed to games that we've been looking forward to for the last 6 months, which is crazy. But we're going to fire through some headlines of the week, Branson. I know you've prepared a long list for us this week, but there is some huge stuff that we want to try and recap and go through. So first one that you've got here is some news relating to A-League expansion, one of our favourite topics at French Island. So what have you got for us?
Yeah, well, it was an article that came out in news.com.au during the week, and expansion has always been a hot topic for the A-Leagues, both for the women's side and the men's side. In particular for the men's side, they've been talking about, potentially putting teams in Tassie, Canberra, New Zealand, Wollongong, all that sort of stuff. 12 teams isn't enough. It doesn't seem to be what everyone wants. We want sort of a full home and away fixture. We just don't get that with 12. So it's always been something that is a hot topic in soccer Twitter and across football in Australia. But we saw in this news article, it was talking with, who is it? Townsend? What's his first name? Why can't I remember his first name?
Danny Townsend.
Yes, thank you. It was an interview with him, specifically talking about expansion, and some of the comments that he made seem to indicate, look, it's always been on the cards, but seem to indicate that it's a lot closer than we might think. The crux of this was that it could even happen as soon as next year. A couple of quotes that I got from that article: 14-team A-League remains a possibility for next season, with the Australian professional leagues to conduct a strategic review into expansion over the next 6 months. So that seems to indicate that it could be really soon. Does that take you by surprise, Sean?
No, it doesn't, because I think this is one of those, it's very rare that you get all fan bases of all clubs, all like administrators, supporters, players, whatever else kind of aligned. Everybody seems to really be like agreeing that 16 is that perfect sweet spot for Australian football, where it's going to be a 30-game home and away season. And that's what everyone's been pushing for so long. And whenever we have these scenarios and situations where expansion becomes a conversation, it's always intrigued me that instead of having like a 1 or 2, we don't have like a 4 or 5, but over like a 5-year period. Because there's always like 10 bidders. There's always 11 and 12 like rumored other ones that could have been involved in it. I think the last expansion bid, there was like 17 initially submitted bids that then whittled down to 11, that then whittled down to a final 6. And that, includes a lot of mainstays: Canberra, Tassie that you already mentioned, French Island, of course. We're always submitting different stuff and no one ever getting back to us. But it's always seems to be something that's super exciting. What also kind of couples with that is that there was a great interview during the week with James Johnson about the National Second Division and that framework, and potentially the National Second Division, if that does get up and running relatively quickly, maybe for the first 2 years it's got like 2 promotion spots and there is no relegation. Like maybe that's how they're looking at trying to get up to 16. So fascinating stuff. It'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. one for you, and I didn't put it on the run sheet because I'm a bit of a jerk like that. Did you see Wollongong Wolves tweet throughout the course of the week?
I did. I was going to mention that as well. They had a sort of like what would you call it? Like not it implied that they had a bid in the works or something. It was a little bit cryptic. That's the word. It was sort of like keep your eyes open for possible expansion with like, you know, the eyeball emojis, and you're like, oh, okay. Like, are you just indicating that you're going to announce a bid? Is there something more to it? It certainly got me interested. What did you think of it?
I think maybe a social media intern went into business for themselves or forgot they weren't looked into their personal account because it does feel yeah, if it
It's
leads to
ambitious.
it's ambitious, and if it leads to nothing, it was like, well, why would you do that? Like, I get building the hype. I'm going to shout out A League Couch Critics as well because they did a great Wollongong Wolves preview
Yeah.
about how they thought they would go in a national second division and in a like expanded A League competition as well. They've done it for the Gold Coast a couple of weeks ago, so they're kind of reeling through all of them. We're waiting for our French Island episode for them to get in touch with us, but yeah, always super exciting expansion content is always fantastic. Like just any little like grain that they give us that makes us think there's going to be new teams and a bigger competition, like everyone just gobbles it up. So hopefully we do have some exciting news in the next couple of weeks that we can unpack further. And hopefully, Bran, you and I have got 6, 7 different bids that we'll try and go and preview and try and fly around the country too.
Well, and just quickly on expansion as well, one thing that I didn't know that I picked up in the article, it said that the Asian Football Confederation requirement is that teams have to play at least 26 games in a season. So if we add another 2 teams, that gives us enough for a full home and away. So that would be ideal. So the one thing that sort of irks me about expanding possibly next year is it feels like A-League expansion is almost always rushed. We live in Melbourne, we live in Victoria. The AFL has expanded. When they went to the Gold Coast, when they went to Western Sydney, they had like a 5-year plan. They had teams, squads playing in like, you know, the VFL and that sort of stuff, so they could build up a bit of a young playing group. They had plenty of time to get facilities in order, all that sort of stuff. So Townsend said he wouldn't rule out teams being added as early next season. That just seems super rushed to me. So hopefully, I mean, while I'd love 2 more teams next year, hopefully I actually think it would be better if it wasn't. And if some of these bids got more time to plan and sort of build up a supporter base, like MacArthur, they seemed more ready to come into the league when they eventually did than Western United.
Yeah, definitely. But they also seem more ready to come in from day one than Western United were, if that makes sense, because that facilities part that you touched on, with more headlines to come on facilities in a moment, that's really the important part. If you were going to pick 2 sides right now off the top of your head, who would you pick to go in?
Are we established or are we talking
Either or.
new
Just
franchises?
pick your favourites. I don't mind.
I think the next 2, I liked what you said before. I think the next 2 should be franchises. I think put a team in Canberra, put a team in Tassie. That's my opinion. And then I think after that, to get to 16, I think they should be established and somehow linked to an NSD. I think that would be a very good way of sorting it. Yeah. What about you?
French Islands, always French Islands. We can't
Of
go
course.
anywhere else. But we're going to jump forward. So VAR drama, just with all the great things we've talked about the season starting up again and gushing about the football and being back in stadiums, all that sort of stuff. Some things don't change, regardless of what broadcaster we happen to be using. And a bit of VAR drama and camera drama throughout the course of this week. Talk to us a bit more about that one.
Yeah, well, we'll start with the VAR. So Greg O'Rourke put out, what would you call it, like an editorial piece or whatever it was on Keep Up, and he sort of revealed this little nugget that the VAR wasn't working in the Brisbane Melbourne City game on Friday night. You and I were at the game. We obviously had no idea. I'm not too sure if the broadcast mentioned it. But yeah, it turns out that the VAR was down. My favourite part was he blamed it on a Telstra network outage earlier in the day, which is just so good. When in doubt, just blame Telstra. So it's kind of, I don't know, comforting to know that the A-League men are still relying on Telstra, just like us, I guess. You know, if Telstra had an outage now, I don't know if we'd be recording the podcast. So it's good to know that a professional leagues is as susceptible as we are. But look, that's not great. The VAR drama sort of ties in as well to the camera drama sort of across the weekend as well that I wanted to speak as well about, which was the Western United Melbourne Victory game. They had all sorts of technical issues there. They had, 12 cameras at the field. 11 of them did not work. So they only had one camera that they could use for the broadcast. Apparently, they were able to incorporate more additional cameras for non-live replays, but for just showing the game, they only had one camera there. Greg O'Rourke again did say in his piece that the technical issues behind that have already been addressed. That was a quote directly from the article, so that's sort of a good sign. Another issue that was going on with Paramount as well was the audio wasn't synced up. So like you would see a shot and then, half or a second later, you would hear the commentary. So that wasn't great either. So when we incorporate, some Paramount issues, because there's other things as well, like you can't pause live games. You can't, if you try to watch a game after it's already started, you don't have a watch live or a watch from the start function. Paramount have been pretty open in saying that stuff isn't available now, but it might be in the future. My question for you, Sean, sorry, that was a lot of talking. My question for you is, does this raise any alarm bells? Because, I mean, it's only week one, but we are seeing, flashbacks to that Foxtel era where stuff just broke all the time in terms of cameras not working or technical issues, tuber guy, the hexagon of death, all that sort of stuff, VAR just not working for whatever reason. Does this raise alarm bells for you, or are you willing to give Paramount a little bit of a break here?
So first and foremost, shout out to Greg O'Rourke, because I think the transparency was great. I don't think they needed to do that, but he did it anyway, and I hope it's a regular thing that happens, maybe not every week, but throughout the course of the season, just so that we get a bit of transparency as to what's going on. Otherwise, the tinfoil hat brigade over in soccer Twitter, they really do go nuts, and so people have gone nuts with the screenshot that's on screen at the moment as to whether Kai Truan's equaliser was onside or not. We'll leave that one up to the officials. I give them the benefit of the doubt. The difference being that we knew Fox Sports was the broadcaster for 15 years, like they knew how to do a live studio setup. They knew how to do a live reporting from different stadiums around the country. So they had set a standard that they then kept falling short of. And some of that, I believe personally, and again, don't sue me because I don't have the money, would be that they were trying to devalue the quality of the product because they were trying to get it at a lower price. I think that's pretty widely kind of regarded that, for a certain period, Fox were not putting the adequate resourcing into football, and in particular women's football. So the W League was the one where Tuber Guy happened. It's where they usually had single camera setups, no replays, nothing like that. So I think there's a difference between them actively withdrawing funds and resources and this scenario where I view that just Paramount and 10 and Viacom and however we want to split it, they're just getting used to doing a live football setup. It was their first weekend of live football matches outside of the FA Cup, and as we know with the FA Cup, it's usually a single camera setup in a regional location. This was in Geelong, where broadcast quality has never been good. I don't think I've watched a single game at Geelong and thought, oh, this camera's really well set up or it's perfectly aligned or whatever else. There was a game there last year, I think, or the season before, where the camera was off center. Like the camera was 10 yards to the left of the center circle. So everything you were watching just felt like super weird. So it's not just their fault, but you do still want to see that improvement. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because they're putting so much effort and time and money and marketing into the game that they clearly want it to be successful. And I would just say that this is an early teething problem of transitioning to that. The Paramount Plus app needs work. I've been watching it on Template because the Paramount Plus app isn't great. They've acknowledged that, and I think they'll continue to drive and improve that as we all get complaining on Facebook and Twitter. And I think things like different stadium setups will start to reap different rewards because other than the VAR drama, the broadcast quality of the game on Friday night at Amy was very good. I thought the Sydney Derby broadcast quality was very good as well. So sometimes it's going to be they're going to have to figure out these little niches and pockets at different venues and how they're going to work. There's only one more game at Geelong again this season. We will see after that match how much improvement they've made during that time.
Yeah, and just two little things that I wanted to touch on as well. Paramount, to their credit, I think they've been really open in stuff not working. You mentioned Greg O'Rourke with that transparency, but even on Twitter as well, it seems like Paramount are like, yep, we know there's issues. If you've got problems, let us know. Which, again, that sort of openness and that willingness to take feedback on and try to improve is super different to what we saw from Foxtel, which was just absolutely nothing. No apologies for anything. It all just sucked, and it kept on sucking for the entire year. So I do like that they've acknowledged that they've got issues. They've acknowledged things that they want to do better, but they want to hear about it as well. So that's really good. We've seen them listen in terms of like some of the commentators, where it seemed like, the football community cried out for certain personalities and they were able to go out and get them. So I like that. Another thing, just coming back to VAR, another tidbit from that as well. I saw Joey Lynch on Twitter said apparently the referee of the game told Scotty Jamieson that VAR came back in the second half. So apparently it did come online. So for that screen grab that we've got of the controversial offside, apparently VAR was in play. That again, that's a terrible angle. Like, well, it's not terrible, but it's slightly deceptive. But the other thing that I heard was apparently that there was a City player, I think it was Naboo, was offside in the build-up to City's second goal. So it's
really?
not so. Apparently, I tried to go back and watch it on the highlights. I couldn't pick it. Sorry, pardon me. I couldn't pick it up. I'm not sure who I'm looking at, but I heard that last night that it wasn't so much the Brisbane goal that got ruled out, but more as City's second one that probably shouldn't have counted. But VAR drama, we love it. I mean, we don't love it, but it's nice to know that some things always stay the same.
Yeah, and it was the linesman, I think, that actually called this offside as well. So, like,
Eagle-eyed.
eagle-eyed linesman, we'll give him the credit, and it's always tough. Like, even this angle, looking at it now, it's hard to tell because it's slightly off center. The mole of the grass kind of gives some stuff away, but is that mole of the grass perfectly level? We don't really know. So we'll credit the officials on that one. But we're going to jump forward ahead to off the pitch technical issues, and now on the pitch actual issues. MacArthur, who have not had the greatest couple of weeks from a PR department, from a marketing department, from a, I guess, fan perspective, have again kind of scored a bit of an own goal in the lead up. I think it was about 24 hours prior to their game that got moved.
It was on Friday.
It was on Friday. So what's that, 48 hours prior? I don't know, whatever it is. Friday afternoon, heading into the first weekend of the season. You've got a big home game coming up. You got to try and get a decent crowd. You've got all these great new signings, a horrific new kit, and Campbelltown Sports Ground is not ready to go. The images on the screen are of the quality of the pitch heading into a round one fixture. Not really any excuse because the NRL hasn't played there for a couple of weeks. They've been...
I heard that the last game to even be played on Campbelltown was MacArthur back in July. They were actually the last professional team to play a game on that pitch.
Is that the one we were at?
No, because we were at Jubilee, weren't we? Because that was...
yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But so apparently the last game to be played at Campbelltown was a MacArthur home game, which just makes it even worse.
Yeah, so it got into a little bit of a spat as well, where like MacArthur, I personally think, and by all means, Bullpen, you can fire off it on Twitter or in the comment section below, their communications are usually fairly poor. Even just the stuff with Gino Mara coming out and saying they don't have a vaccination policy was just so tone deaf to the rest of the league going through all the thing, like everything that they can to try and get the league up and running. The sacrifices Wellington have been making for the last 2 years to keep the league running. Like, it just seemed so absolutely tone deaf for where they were doing. And then again, they came out and kind of blamed the council in Campbelltown, which the council then fired back and said, hey, we deemed this ground playable. You guys would have been fine. But obviously it's not from the screenshots, but do they need to be involved in a public spat with their local council authority? Like, I feel like it could have been handled a little bit better. But there's a bit of hypocrisy there. We just praised Paramount and Greg O'Rourke for transparency. I guess this is another type of transparency. But some things you think, need to be managed better, particularly in round one.
Well, I think with this as well, it's not just transparency, it's mixed messaging. So apparently the groundskeeper came out and said that he did everything by the book, that he thought the pitch was playable. There was a great tweet I saw during the week as well from Oz Goals, and it's like a satellite image, and the first one shows Campbelltown in August, the second one shows it on the 25th of October, and the first image shows like the grass is green, looks great. The second image, it looks like there's nothing at all. So apparently it was like a reseeding gone wrong or whatever. But the other thing that I found ridiculous is how had MacArthur not checked it out before Friday? Like, this is 2 days before the game. It's their own stadium. They're the only tenants in terms of like, there's no NRL team playing there at the moment. How were they not at this pitch, earlier in the week, 2 weeks out, whatever, investigating it. Why was, because they came out and said that they were only told of the issues like on Thursday or on Friday or whatever, and then had to make a decision. So it also just screams to me of mismanagement. You know, it's round one. I would have thought you'd be there every week, you'd be checking in, making sure that everything's up to scratch. And yeah, then on Friday it comes out. Those pictures are pretty shocking as well. I know they said it's playable, and it technically might be, but it is by no means like professional class or professional quality.
It would be, if it had a cricket pitch running down the middle or one of the touchlines, it would be the most Sunday League ground. I think I've played on this ground 75 times throughout the course of my very illustrious Sunday League career. But yeah, absolutely horrific. We hope it gets better because we do want to see MacArthur playing at home, and we do want to see them capitalising on getting some crowds.
Yeah,
Like
apparently they're round three. Sorry, mate. Apparently they're round three home fixtures in doubt at Campbelltown as well.
Wouldn't shock me, but like then what happens? You know, like can they go to Newcastle again? Do we try and get reverse fixtures where they'll go and play the team they were going to play away from home and just flip it around? Like that's a challenge as well. If you've got this issue and you know it's going to take 3 weeks, just do it now. Like pull the trigger on it now. See if you can get those fixtures kind of reversed in one way or another. I know there's challenges that come with that, but it's like again. We've talked about MacArthur before, their weird relationship with Northbridge and the fact that they don't train and they're not administrated, or their administration is not based in MacArthur. This is obviously a downstream impact of that they're not at this stadium every day. They're not training at these facilities. They're not playing on this ground regularly to get ready for matches. Like it should have been something that came up 2-3 weeks ago, not 48 hours before. And it just reflects badly on everyone, unfortunately. It's just one of those horrific ones. But something that doesn't reflect badly at all is our girl, Samantha Kerr. I nearly said Sammy Kerr. Sportswoman of the Year, I guess. Great sportsmanship with some of the US women's national team players. Has been nominated for the FIFA Best Women's Player Award. She's on a big shortlist, and you'll have to correct me here, Brand. It starts with like a huge shortlist, and then they whittle it down to the final few. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes.
So initial,
like I think it's a shortlist, and then just before they announce the award, it goes down to 5.
I think that's right. Or potentially it goes down to 3 and it's the 3 that they have there on the night or something like that. I could be getting it confused with the men's award. But very interesting to see her nominated again. She has been nominated a few times and beaten out a few times. But what are some of your expectations on the award, or who do you think are the big people she might be up against, if anyone is already heavily rumoured?
I'll be honest, I haven't seen the rest of the shortlist. I just saw that Sam Kerr was on it, and I was like, "You beauty, she's going to win it." I didn't even bother looking. I was like, "She's on it. That's it." Because she scored a hat trick for Chelsea. She's scored, I think it was like at least 5 more goals than anyone else in the FA WSL. She's been scoring in the Champions League, scoring for the Matildas. Honestly, I didn't even look. I saw that she was on it. I'm like, "Yep, beauty, great." I did just find as well. So apparently, it's open to a public vote. So the finalists get announced in January, and then the winner is revealed on the 17th of January. So again, that doesn't really help us out in saying how many the shortlist gets whittled down to. But I think I think she deserves to win it. I know we're heavily biased being Australian and big Sam Kerr fans, but I honestly saw that she was on it. I'm like, yep, great, she's got it. What about you? Did you peruse the list more than I did?
I did. So Vivian Miedema might win it, because she's very good. I think she's arguably the best player in women's football at the moment. And shout out to MMTV, who'll no doubt be thrilled with that one, who's not listening. But she also tore us apart when Australia played the Netherlands in one of Tony G's first games. She was brilliant. I think she got a hat trick inside like 25 minutes or something like that. But Arsenal haven't won a damn thing. And then the only other challenges will be the teams that have been competing at a high level in the Champions League, because that's kind of the nut that Chelsea hasn't completely cracked just yet, even though they were dominant in the Women's Super League last season. So there's competition there, but I think it's a more level playing field because each will be looking at others. Some years it's like Marta just wins it because she's Marta. Like that's it. She's just going to win it. And that has happened to Sam Kerr before, where she's had really great seasons. But I think the prevalence of European football is going to put Sam Kerr ahead of a lot of the players that are still playing in North America and still playing in the FAWSL. So, sorry, not the FAWSL, the North American Women's Super League. So that will be very very interesting to see. But from one Australian, we're going to jump to another one who's had a very successful week. Our boy Marty Boyle is Australian as, I don't know, a Bunnings snag or Vegemite on toast or whatever else. Am I hungry? Is that why I just did food analogies? Who knows? But his hat trick for Hibernian has set up a clash with Ange Postecoglou in the Cup final in Scotland. So what are some of your thoughts on this? I don't know that much about Scottish football outside of Football Manager, so I'm going to defer to your judgment and expertise on this one.
So the big thing is that they beat Rangers. So Rangers obviously went not obviously, but Rangers in the last season, they went the entire season undefeated. They were champions. It was something like their 50th title or whatever. If you want to count it, the club went into its administration a long time. The club went into administration a few years ago. This was their first title after that. They had Steven Gerrard as their manager. Like, Rangers were just a bit of a powerhouse. They're in top spot at the moment. Marty Boyle and Hibs roll up, win 3-1. They were up 3-0 in the first half, ended up winning 3-1. My favourite stat as well, Hibs had 29% possession. They had 3 shots the entire game, 3 shots on target, 3 goals, all from Marty Boyle, which is just fantastic. That's just, like, amazing. You know, I think Rangers had 18 shots according to the Google stats for 1 goal, and Hibs go, no worries, we got Marty Boyle, 3 shots, 3 goals. We're loving it. But yeah, sets up a very tasty clash with Ange Postecoglou and Celtic in the cup final. A bit of an Aussie connection in Scotland. Love to see it.
Absolutely. There's heavily rumoured that Steven Gerrard just fears Australians and is worried that he can't beat Ange, so that's why he's departed and gone across to Aston Villa. But yeah, fantastic to see
that tweet. Loved it. Loved it. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, Hibs are like, and sorry to any Scottish football fans, Mikey Mufsud immediately just jumped into my mind, but Hibernian have always had like a strong Australian connection. They had Jamie McLaren, Jackson Irvine, now Martin Boyle as well. Like they have given, even though Marty's a different kind of scenario, given that we adopted him late in his life, they have given quite a few opportunities to Australians trying to play abroad and in that Premier League. And they've got a fantastic kit as well. It's a map of it's a map of Edinburgh, their region and their area. So fantastic to see that sort of stuff there. But that does wrap up our headlines for the week. Branson, we'll keep an eye on those results in the next few weeks and that All Aussie Cup final as well. We're going to jump into the Hall of Fame. Now, we didn't do Hall of Fame last week. Our most recent inductee was, of course, Josh Cavallo, who made it in with 100% of the vote, the only person to ever do that, undisputed, that he went straight in. We've kind of had 1 week of football. I haven't really kind of prepped anything. Have you got any nominations that you want to put forward for this week?
Yeah, look, you know, I'm not a huge fan of recency bias. I think that sort of, tilts Hall of Fame nomination. So I've gone back and I've looked at yesteryear, and an old friend of soccer Twitter. It is the pitch invader at the Central Coast Mariners game. I can't remember what season it is off the top of my head. I've just got the iconic image of him stuck in my head. A pitch invader itself doesn't sound, that dramatic. Happens on a semi-regular basis, but it was just sort of the peak A-Leagueness of this pitch invader. So he pitch invaded at a Mariners home game. He had a broken leg, so he was on crutches at the time. So somehow a dude on crutches gets over the fence, gets over the the sponsorship board signage as well, on crutches with a broken leg, stands in front of the goal. There's a great image. He's standing there with like his arms and his crutches straight out. That's the one that's like embedded in my mind. But if you look a little bit closer, so it's a guy at a Mariners game. He's wearing NRL branded shorts and then a Cricket Australia top. So to be fair, it's gold. Like, he's at a Mariners game. Let's assume he's a Mariners fan. So he's wearing the right colour. But it's just like broken leg, pitch invading, wearing NRL shorts, wearing an Australian jersey. And you're like, what are we doing here? Like, this is just great. And also for security, like, you don't have to be too fleet-footed to be on a security, team, but there's normally 1 or 2 blokes at a game who have like boots on, who are the designated streaker chasers. But I would have thought that any security guard would be able to corral a man with a broken leg on crutches, unless he used them as like some sort of weapon to fend them off or whatever. But it's just like, it's ridiculous. And it's classic Mariners. I love the Mariners. I love all their peak A-League moments, but I thought he's great. I think he deserves a spot in a Hall of Fame. It's a great image.
I don't like, your recency bias thing is correct, but also nostalgia is like kind of sometimes leads me down the wrong path. I feel like he was out there for a while
Oh,
before anyone got him in.
yeah.
I think it was like a good couple of minutes that he was on the pitch and that the game was stopped. And I remember Fox Sports just didn't cut away from him like they usually do when stuff like that happens.
Yeah.
They just they filmed
Good on
him
him.
like it was part of the halftime entertainment or something like that. But I do want someone, and hopefully there's a fan listing, can just get a running tally of the amount of Mariners things that you've nominated for the Hall of Fame over the last few weeks, because I'm pretty sure
Every single one.
every single one so far. So I love your consistency. I'm nominating the return of the King, David Squires. So if those of you that don't know David Squires, he does these fantastic kind of, I want to say
Comic
semi,
strips?
yeah, comic strips, like semi-satirical cartoons, which are fantastic. So he works for The Guardian. He does them for the English Premier League, which are hugely popular. He's a UK native who I think was in Brisbane for a bit and has now returned to the UK. And when he was over here, he was doing A-League content, and it is some of the best A-League content that you have ever seen. David Squires is absolutely phenomenal. I think it's at Squires_David on Twitter, but we'll get links in the description and on the vote and all that sort of stuff on Twitter this week. He's back. So he did another A-League season preview one, and it is it's dripping with memes, inside and east references. It is just the best thing to watch every week. I hope it's a weekly thing. I hope this wasn't just a once-off that he did for the Guardian Australia. I hope he's back. And even if he can't be back, he'll have a worthy spot in the French Island Football Hall of Fame for his works and contributions in the past. But definitely go and check both of those out. We'll get links over on Twitter. We'll try and get a link in the comment section below, but I will definitely forget to do it because I forget every week. But yeah, go over on Twitter and you can help vote for the next inductee into the Hall of Fame. But Branson, that does take us in to our fixtures and results for the week. It's the first week of the season, so we're going to recap each of these games. Now, you've got a way that you want us to try and do these recaps and reviews. Do you want to talk us through what this strategy is going to be like?
Yeah, it's going to be quick and easy. We're going to come up with 3-word reviews for every game. So obviously, this is a podcast, so a lot of people in the soccer universe would already be aware of some of these results. So we don't want to get into too recappy talking about play-by-play stuff of the game. We want to maybe discuss some big talking points and that sort of stuff. And I think a great way to get started and a fun way to get started is just a nice and easy three-word review. So we've both been thinking of them. We've got 3-word reviews for every single game. So I think that's just a good way to start off our conversation for each fixture, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. So are we going to do one each? Is that how you're viewing it?
We'll go a one per team. So we'll each, not one each per fixture. We'll just go the other FIFA has one per game. So
Okay.
It's a collab effort. So I think that's a good way to do it. Unless you've got a ripper. If you've got rippers for both, then we'll see how we go, because we don't want to limit ourselves.
I've seen your first one on the run sheet, and I'm not going to be able to beat it. So you might as well start us off and give me a bar to try and loop.
Well, that's it. Well, we'll start off with the first game, which was Melbourne City taking on Brisbane Roar. The champions got the job done. 2-1 winners over Brisbane Roar. My 3-word review for that is Curtis delivers goods. It was Curtis Good who scored the opening goal of the game. It was a save from Jamie McLaren. Curtis Good in prime position to bang home the rebound. Scored his first goal of the year. Is that his first goal for City? I don't know. But he's on track for 26 goals this season. So that's pretty remarkable for a centre-back.
He's the equal leading scorer in the league at this point in time,
Wow.
which is absolutely crazy to see.
Yeah, so that game as well, what was it? It was an own goal for City's second off a massive deflection. I can't even remember who had the strike, actually.
Connor Metcalf, and the deflection was off a very impressive Anton Milinaaric up until that point.
Yeah, very unfortunate. It was going well wide. Brisbane Roar did get one back through Luka Ivanovic in the second half. They came very close as well to getting the 2 equalisers. There was the offside goal and then a shot at the end that missed. Very quickly, what impressed you the most from City and Brisbane in this game?
I think both teams would be happy, and that's probably a weird thing to say, so don't crucify me, Brisbane teams. Melbourne City smashed them in the first 45 minutes. There was a good 30-minute period where I don't think Brisbane got out of their own half. So I think City will be happy with that they were able to actually kind of go on and carry the game. I think Brisbane will be very happy with the way they responded in the second half, because if Brisbane had have gotten an equaliser and potentially, as you've mentioned, that late chance, a go-ahead goal, I don't think anyone in the stadium would have felt that they didn't deserve it. They were excellent, particularly in that last 20-minute period. So I think Both teams will be happy with different facets of their game. It was very much a round one fixture, though. It wasn't fully polished. It wasn't 90 minutes of like back and forth, which is what I think will happen when these two teams play each other again in Brisbane in about 2 months' time. But yeah, I think there were definitely massive positives that both teams will take out of the fixture, and they'll move on to bigger and better things next week, hopefully.
I was impressed by Brisbane. I thought they, again, very quickly, I thought they looked good. In the first half, yes, you're right, City dominated. I didn't think they looked in all sorts at the back. It seemed like they had a bit of a plan. The first goal, bit unlucky in terms of it was a rebound. The second goal, definitely unlucky off a deflection. So while City dominated the pressure, dominated possession, I thought Brisbane did a pretty good job of absorbing it. And then the second half, they were able to execute a far more attacking game plan. City, I think, lucky to hold on in the end to get 3 points, but they'll be happy with that, mate. We're going to move on to the next game, though. Western Sydney Wanderers taking on Sydney FC. There was a lot of hype around this one, which was great to see. Oh, hang on, have I done you dirty in the run sheet? We got VUC, W, Western United. Which one do you want to go?
Oh, I fixed it. We're on Western United victory. You're all good.
I thought we were talking about Western Sydney.
No, they're both kicking off at the same time, so we're going to have to figure out how we do this each week. But yes, I've got Western United victory on the screen, so you're all good.
Okay, cool. Well, Western United taking on Melbourne Victory. I'll just pivot. This is great. I'll just pivot my intro there. First game of the season, of course, down at GMHBA. What is it? The Westgate Derby, I think they call it, which is a bit of a weird name, but that's all right. Melbourne Victory, new era for the VUC. Started off well, 1-0 victors over Western United. You've got a 3-word review for this one. What is it, mate?
I've got 2. So I've got Miranda Magic Moment, because he got the goal on his debut from the corner, and he looks like to be a good signing, the ex-Wolves centre-back. And then the other one, I got Popper's perfect performance, because it was the most Tony Popovich game I've ever seen. What Victory fans would have been looking for is to get the things that they didn't do well last season, which is defensive stability, quick in transition. They already look like a Popovich team, and that's from day one. And that's why, and I was a bit critical of it last week in the season preview, a lot of people have them very high on their expected finishes this season. They are going to improve quite a bit. I'm not 100% there yet, because I think Western United aren't that strong, but for them, a good away win and a good away performance and a very strong defensive performance is exactly what they wanted. But what were your thoughts on the match?
Well, there was streaming issues with Paramount, as we said. Only had one camera. Apparently, they missed the first 4 minutes as well. Can't blame them. The first half overall was just pretty crap. There wasn't really much in terms of exciting football. Second half livened up. I think it was a really good result for the Victory. I saw on Twitter as well. Let me go and find it. Apparently, the Victory have been terrible when it comes to opening round performances. Over their history, they have only 3 wins, including this one over Western United. 3 wins, 9 draws, 5 losses. So the fact that they actually won on the opening day of the fixture is pretty remarkable for them. And apparently, again, I saw this on Twitter. I think it was for VUC's sake. Twitter, the last 2 times that they've won on opening day, they've gone on to win the league. So, I mean,
there was another time that they won on opening day and didn't win the league. So who knows?
No, there wasn't. There wasn't, because the 2 times previously they've done it, they've won the league. The 3rd time was this year. So anyway, going back to the game. Good positives, because considering they didn't have Sporanovic. Relante was a laid out. I thought Icon, Davidson, and D'Agostino weren't that impactful either. So there's still room to grow, but on the road they were able to get a win. That was really good. The away fans as well, I thought, were fantastic. For whatever reason, they ended up on the broadcast side, so it genuinely looked more like a Victory home game than a Western United one. So I think that was poor planning by whoever organised that. But it was plenty of colour. Second half was a lot better than the first. But the VUC have to be happy with that. I can't remember how many games they won last year. It was only 4 or 5, so they've already got 1 on the board. So good on them.
Power to him. Heading along to the next one, and now you can actually start firing off with it. The Sydney Derby, Western Sydney Wanderers and Sydney FC playing a 0-0 draw. What is your 3-word review for that one?
Well, I haven't got a 3-word review because I've seen yours, and again, like what you said with mine, I'm a big fan of the alliteration here, and you've gone with that theme. I'm fully on board, so I'll do my intro spiel again. There was a lot of hype around this one, which was fantastic to see in the build-up. There was video pieces or whatever. There was interviews on Channel 10. The build-up was great, but the actual performance on the field failed to deliver. So my one, which was pretty crap, it was just bin opening derbies was mine. But that's pretty crap. I want to get to yours because yours is very good.
Mine's not bad. It's Derby Day Donuts. So
But I like it. The alliteration, it's great.
It is. It is. That I'm a cliche when it comes to stuff like that. But the challenge, right, is that whoever has the Channel 10 spot, that prime 7:45 p.m. Saturday night kickoff, they need to just agree to not defend. Like that, we need to get games out there that are 3-2, 4-3, whatever else, so that casual fans that just stumble onto it need to watch those games. Like the league needs to come up with some sort of mandate that maybe you can only play 3 at the back in that kit fixture or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Because don't get me wrong, the presentation was excellent. Paramount really tried to do as much as they could to play up the game. I think they got a little bit of work to do in some of their video packages, like their previews and stuff, but I think that will come with time. I think that's just the experience of Fox Sports back in the day. Thank God we didn't get another press package that was like more about Mark Bosnich and Robbie Slater's careers than it was the actual teams that were playing against each other, which happened a few different times over the last couple of years. So all of that stuff was excellent, and then the match just kind of needed a goal. It needed a little bit of a spark, but it was hard fought contest. You can see how much Western Sydney have improved. You can see how Sydney FC is still going to be a decent side this season. So yeah, like I think both of them will look at it as being relatively successful, but same sentiment as you. Don't do derbies in round one. It makes for a poor contest. It makes for a poor environment. We need to kind of build up those key marquee fixtures to be around rounds 4 and 5 to try and build hype over the holiday period.
I think one thing that was pretty revealing afterwards, I think it was Reece Williams, the Wanderers captain, after the game, said like, yeah, it's a game that we didn't want to lose. And I think that summed it up perfectly. Neither Sydney nor the Wanderers want to start off the season with a derby loss. It's a bit deflating. So obviously you're less likely to go all out. So again, there was one derby that we'll get to later that was in the opening round that was an absolute belter, but between the VUC Western United game and Western Sydney against Sydney, 2 big sort of rivalry games, and both were pretty underwhelming.
Absolutely. Well, we'll jump across to the next game, which is Perth Glory versus Adelaide. Huge shout out to the crowd that made it down to Perth. 17,000 in the stands there. Daniel Sturridge, obviously that knock-on effect is going to happen. Hopefully that stays consistent throughout the year because they desperately need it. But 3-word review. What do you got?
I've gone for Bruno's glorious belter.
That is technically 3 words. I guess I went Bruno goes bang because I just can't.
That's good.
Myself.
Well, what if we merge them and go Bruno's glorious banger? There we go.
Works for me. I'll meet you in the middle. But yeah,
I was glad to word glorious in there. Get it? Perth Glory. And it was a glorious strike. What a ripper.
We look forward to a letter from Tony Sage's lawyers for cease and desist. But I thought it was an okay game. It wasn't great. It definitely had that whiff of Perth are going to get a huge crowd and Sturridge is just going to come off the bench for the last 15 minutes and they're going to lose the match. And then thankfully Bruno managed to pull out a pretty spectacular goal. Definitely the goal of the round, early contender for goal of the season until the next absolute cracker. Yeah, absolute strike, very, very good strike. He did that quite regularly when he was at Melbourne City. I don't think he's been as prolific at Perth Glory, but then they shared during that broadcast that he's actually scored quite a few goals for Perth. So that portion will be interesting. It was fascinating. I think that when he scored that goal, Keogh and Sturridge were on the pitch with him. So that might be a bit of a change in tact. For me, Perth haven't quite resolved their defensive issues from last season. And Adelaide, I think, really could have put their foot down and really gone after the game a little bit more and tried to kill it off to get themselves a 2-goal margin. So that would have been interesting. But what were some of your thoughts on the game?
Well, just quickly, I believe that's Bruno's 27th goal for Perth. I think he scored 13 in each of his last 2 seasons. My takeaway, I was pretty impressed with Adelaide. I thought, Perth playing in front of a huge crowd. As you said, 17,000. It was a sellout, I believe, as well. Even though there were a few empty seats around, it was still a sellout on the books. I thought that Adelaide actually had the initiative in the first 45. I thought that was really good to see. Yengi on the scorebooks as well. He was sort of a bit of a revelation for them last year. Good to see him get another early goal. I was impressed with Adelaide. I thought that they would be on the back foot more. I thought it would have been Perth. Yep, here we go. Big crowd. Let's go. Put on a spectacle. for our fans, but it was actually Adelaide who had most of possession in this game, and I thought had most of the better attacking intent. So again, I wasn't fully sold on Adelaide. I think in my prediction, I didn't have them making the top six. Again, it's only one round, but I was more impressed by Adelaide than I thought I would be.
Yeah, and they struggled away from home last season. So if they've figured out
Yeah,
that resiliency, if they've figured out how to do that, they're going to be very strong. And they've still got like Craig Goodwin to come back. I think Jakobsen as
yep,
well. Like
yep.
they're going to get better and improve. And hopefully for Perth, they start to click a little bit more. Given that I think Sturridge had like 3 training sessions before the match, so like yeah, it's going to be interesting. But moving across to arguably, I think Branson, the match of the round, the F3 derby, Newcastle Jets playing Central Coast Mariners. 3-word review. We've both gone in very different directions for this one, so why don't you fight? Let's do the negative one first. You can start and you can try and explain it. Otherwise, the
Yeah.
soundbite will live forever on the internet.
My 3-word review. So of course it was the Central Coast Mariners winning 2-1. My 3-word review is Jets suck ass, which is great. And that being tied into what was it a couple of weeks ago on Twitter, the Mariners official Mariners account just tweeted out Jets suck ass, and you go, that's fantastic. They deleted it, a little while later, but of course the screenshot was already captured. It will forever live on. Dare I say it, it'll be a future brand Hall of Fame nomination. Spoiler alert at some point. But it was great. So apparently the Mariners said afterwards as well that they got hacked or something. No idea if that's true or not, or if someone's just gone rogue and like, do you know what? I've had a bad day. I just need a vent. Jets suck ass. And it was great. And, the Mariners, they go out, they beat the Jets. And that was my 3-word review. Harking back to that. An accurate tweet. Look, it wasn't wrong. It was just maybe a little bit harsh. What's your 3-word review?
I don't think they got hacked. I think someone did it
Yeah.
and was told to delete it. But anyway, we're not going to speculate. I've gone with Mariners give hope because,
Nice.
like last year where they came out of nowhere, and this season everyone's kind of like written them off a little bit again. We didn't have them in our top 6. There were quite a few people that didn't have them in our top 6, but they didn't care. They just went out there. They played a decent amount of football. They've got some good young players coming through. I think I've forgotten his name. Jacob Farrell, is it? Got the winner in this one. He was excellent throughout. Lewis Miller, they've got coming through. Dan Hall. That's on top of guys like that came through last season, like Ruben Tonic, Kai Rolls. Josh Nisbet with his first goal in the A-League. Shout out to him. He's a great player. Love him on Football Manager. He's absolutely fantastic if you're looking for a player to pick up. But yeah, I just think they're going to be more competitive than I think people are giving them credit for. And shout out to both Arthur Papas and Nick Montgomery, because both of them went out with very positive game plans. It wasn't really the way we spoke about Western Sydney and Sydney FC not wanting to lose those games. These were 2 teams that were trying to win this match, and that deserves a ton of credit. So far and away for me, the best match of the weekend. And yeah, hopefully it's a bit of a kick on for both of them. Newcastle fans, don't get upset. You guys were much, much better than you were at any point last season. So they'll definitely get wins. They'll definitely get points. They'll definitely be competitive. But for the Mariners, an excellent way to start the season. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I thought there were positives from both sides. Again, similar to what you said with the City against Raw game. I think both teams can come away from this game and be really, really optimistic with what we see. First thing I want to say about this one is I don't like the timing of this game. I can't remember who it was. It was a couple of years ago. A Central Coast Mariners might have been a president or a coach or CEO or someone came out and said that they felt that the F3 derby was disrespected in terms of the time slot that it always finds itself in. That if the league wants it to be a marquee derby, like a big centerpiece rivalry, then they need to play it in a marquee time slot, because it seems like it always gets shafted onto Sunday afternoon. And again, this was the case here. And as we said, this was the game of the round. Like, again, you can never predict necessarily which game is going to be the best spectacle, but I think that it is deserving of a prime time slot here. And so that's one thing that ever since, and again, I can't remember who said it, but ever since they did say it, it's just something that I've noticed as well, that they were spot on, that it does always seem to be put on in a crap time slot as a bit of an afterthought. But anyway, firstly, I thought the Jets looked really good in gold, by the way. I liked that. I thought that was a good look. I like that Valentino Yule got on the score sheet for the Jets. We saw he had a bit of a hot start last year and then faded away. We really didn't see much of him. So he came off the bench, scored. I think that's really good. The Mariners as well. We saw last year they were super successful at being a counter-attacking team where they're able to absorb pressure. They don't need a lot of possession to score. That again, we saw that this week. They had 32% of possession, but 1-2-1. So they just sort of absorb pressure, defend at the back, hit you on the break, and they win games. So it seems like a very similar formula. Again, it's only week one, but it rung true again. Very quickly as well, Daniel Pena. I like the look of him for the Jets.
Yeah, he looks like a handy player. And a couple of the Mariners youngsters from last season that couldn't get in the side, I thought were excellent as well. Just on that fixture thing, I think it was Laurie McKenna, but I could be wrong. I don't want to put that out there and have it be someone else, or Joel Griffiths or someone like that. And I
Yeah.
100% agree. We didn't need to have a Sydney derby and an F3 derby and whatever we call the Perth Adelaide derby, whatever. It's not a real derby, but let's just pretend Western United Melbourne Victory is. We didn't need them all
Yep.
on the same weekend. Like, if this
Yeah.
game was next week and it was given that like prime time 7:45 p.m. Saturday kickoff, who knows how it would have gone. I know the Mariners do kind of push to get some fixtures early on a Sunday because they've got a large family contingent to their membership, and Melbourne City's the same. Like, we never do well with Friday night crowds, but our Sunday afternoon crowds are sometimes quite good unexpectedly because more kids, more parents, all that sort of stuff are able to bring their children along. So that's an interesting point. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out with the fixturing for the remainder of the year.
Two other things. One, very, very quickly. It's Western United against Perth Glory on Friday night to kick off the A League Men round two. Why not have the Jets Mariners on there? Like, why is Western United Perth any bigger? But maybe it's the Sturridge effect. Who knows? Anyway, the other thing as well, there was a bunch of Mariners fans in Newcastle, which was great to see when they scored. I was surprised at how many there were. And again, shout out to the Jets fans. What is it? The Squadron? They might have disbanded, but whatever replaced them, that was full too. But I was surprised at how many Mariners fans there were. But anyway, we can move on to the next game, mate.
Which, for everything we've just said about great entertaining football and everything we've just said about fantastic fan atmosphere, this one didn't have it. We already touched upon MacArthur's issues in this game being rescheduled and taken to McDonald Jones Stadium on the in Newcastle. But a 1-1 draw between MacArthur and Wellington Phoenix. 3-word review, Bran. What do you got?
It's not a great 3-word review, but mine was just pretty dour affair. I was trying to work in, damp, pretty damp affair, but I went for dour in the end. The weather was nuts. It looked, more like the weather we'd be inclined to see in Wellington than in Newcastle. But yeah, my big takeaway. Oh, sorry. What's your 3-word review? And then we'll get your takeaway.
I'd rate horrific club management because they, honestly, MacArthur have shot themselves in the foot, basically. They could have started the season with a home game and a good atmosphere and new signings and all that sort of stuff and really, gotten some momentum going. And just by sheer, I know the stadium stuff's out of their control. Let's say that there was a grass issue. They communicated it 48 hours before. Their fans, probably 90% of them weren't going to be able to travel up to it. It technically had an attendance of 1,100. But that's 1,100, assuming that people hung around and stayed from the game prior, the Mariners and Jets match. So, it's tough. They really, really, really needed to get out of the blocks early, and I think they've kind of stumbled and fallen flat on their face. Bit of a false start for them. Wellington, no criticism of them, because they're obviously playing away from home. There's only so much that they can do. But yeah, just not the way that you want the season to start. So hopefully they're on to bigger and better things. And from a football perspective, I think very much two teams that just want to not lose their opening round fixture. And it kind of played out a little bit that way on the pitch. But what were some of your thoughts?
Well, I thought it was a great start by Wellington as well. I thought, again, in the first half, they looked really, really good. I think it's 1 point gained for the Knicks, 2 points dropped for MacArthur for sure. Wellington, they took the lead. That was good. At the end, it felt like they were just clinging on. It felt like they were desperate to hang on for a draw. MacArthur had all the momentum, felt like they were banging on the door. But again, full credit to Wellington for being able to get that point. And I totally agree with what you said about MacArthur, sorry. It's not an ideal start for them, both on the pitch and off the pitch. The off-the-pitch stuff, totally agree. You get all this excitement for round one, and then 2 days before the season, you find out you can't even go to the home opener. Like, it's just been pulled out from under your feet. And you go, well, if you're a fan, that's not ideal at all. But again, going to the game itself, again, it's only week one, difficult conditions and circumstances for the players as well, because it's not their fault at all. But I would have thought if MacArthur want to be a contender, I think they're a top three side. And if the Knicks are going to finish where I think they might, or where everyone thinks they might, which is going to be down towards the bottom, if you're McCarthy, you would really want to be beating Wellington. Come the end of the year, if they miss out on top two or a home final or whatever by maybe 1 or 2 points, you always go back and you look at some of those fixtures and you go, gee whiz, Wellington round one and we drew. I think that this could, again, it's only week one, but I think that this is already points drop for MacArthur.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Wellington is going to be a team that does cause a few surprises. They're pretty consistent in their lineup from last season. There's a couple of gaps in their squad still, but they are well drilled in their shape and formation and structure. They're going to be a tricky team to beat at different points. But we've got some bonus games this week, Branson. We mentioned it earlier, but FA Cup action also took centre stage midweek, including a clash between the old NSL era, the current A-League era, Sydney Olympic taking on Sydney FC. Do you have a headline for this one?
I don't, but you've got a very good 3-word review. What is it?
I just wrote past meets present, and that's it. Because again, alliteration, and that's all I can do. But City Olympic actually took a lead in this match, and they weren't bad value for the opening 25 minutes or so. They were doing quite well to hang in there with the Sydney FC side that perhaps is a little bit underdone. Yes, they've got some players coming back. Yes, they rotated a slight amount for the midweek fixture, but there were still some of their big names out there. Lafondra was out there, Bratton was out there, Wilkinson was out there. But 4-2, they overcame Sydney Olympic in the end. A pretty decent performance for them. I think they'll be disappointed that Sydney Olympic challenged them at various points, given how long it's been since Olympic seasons ended. But Olympic have some good talent out there. They've got Adam Parkhouse, who of course was at Wellington Phoenix. They've got Roy O'Donovan, who was a Central Coast Mariner, Newcastle Jet striker. There are some very good players outside of the A-League system at the moment, playing in NPL competitions in both New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, wherever you happen to be. There's some great players there. So it does kind of underline that need and necessity for a national second division to get more of these contests and more of this competition going throughout the course of the series. But did you watch this game live or catch the highlights or anything? What were your thoughts?
I did watch this game live. Again, I think the fact that Sydney Olympic took the lead was great, just because it sort of, really got the crowd fired up. It just added spice to the contest. I thought they were good value. It was always going to be tough. Sydney FC had a pretty much full strength side out there. Braddon was playing, Cam Sober was playing, Lafondra was playing. They like a couple of other teams that we're going to talk about in a moment, they didn't roll out their B squad here, and Sydney Olympic were able to take the lead. So full credit to them. The other thing that I thought that was really good, Sydney FC ran over the top of them. That was to be expected, in particularly from like the 60th minute on, you could just tell that squad fitness, that professional versus semi-professional gap just grew larger and larger. The fact that Sydney FC are in full tilt now, it's not just pre-season, it's now regular season. They're taking everything seriously. Olympic have been training for a month, but again, it's only part-time. So I was really impressed when Sydney went up 3-1, the fact that Sydney Olympic were able to get a goal back and make it 3-2. I thought that was a really big positive. I was impressed with that. I didn't think they were going to score again, and they did, and, Sydney FC tacked on another to make it 4-2, but to be able to, be down by 2, get one back, set up a bit more of a grandstand finish, make a bit more of a contest. I thought Sydney Olympic very much held their own. It was just unfortunate again that the weather looked pretty crappy, because there was a pretty big crowd. They were just sort of tucked there up under the grandstand.
And a well-marked crowd as well. You could hear them all the way through, which is always good to see. So jumping across to the other game, you did kind of briefly touch upon it. It was Perth Glory and Melbourne Victory playing off in, I think, the actual previous round's fixture. It was one of the playoff games that kept getting pushed back because Perth wanted to host it in Perth. Obviously, getting in and out of Western Australia is a massive challenge, particularly from Victoria at the moment, given their lockdown restrictions, and that's something the Glory will continue to experience pain with. Then randomly, for no reason at all, Greg Griffin, the Adelaide City CEO, said that Victory should have forfeited the game. Perth Glory kind of wanted to get the forfeit and the walkthrough. And when you look at the two lineups that they put out, pretty dire from both teams. Not as bad on the Victory side. But my 3-word review is why even bother? But what was yours before we dive into that a bit further?
Mine was shocking squad selection. So, so let's preface this with saying I saw both sides of the argument on Twitter. If Perth had won, I saw that they would go from, their round one fixture to Perth. They would then go Adelaide to Melbourne, back to Adelaide, back to Melbourne in 12 days, which is pretty crazy for a team based in Perth. Like, you're going to fly back to Perth for for those games, because they've got midweekers again in the FFA Cup next week. So that is pretty ridiculous, the fixturing in itself. So that's one story there. But then obviously Perth wanted to rest players. So again, for Perth squad, I think they said in the broadcast, not a single player had an A-League cap. And I looked at their lineup and I don't know anyone.
So
Not even someone that you've kind of heard of. I mean, what about you? You're the FM Football Manager guy. You probably knew all the Wonder Kids out there, but not a single name stood out from that Perth lineup.
yeah, so it wasn't actually any of their A-League squad that played. It was the MPL team. So it was the MPL development squad. Ruben Zadkovic, who is the MPL and Academy manager, actually managed the team. If you watch the match, it was him on the sideline yelling at his players, doing whatever else. He sounds like a nightmare of a coach, to be honest, based on some, because he was very well marked up. You could hear quite a bit because there was no crowd, obviously, being in a neutral venue. So that was interesting. Richie Garcia was there, but just physically sitting on the bench, really just kind of hanging out. They had a couple of their promising youngsters like Josh Rawlins, Kieran Bramwell, who you'd think this is a perfect game for. They were sat on the bench. None of their senior side, I think, even travelled for the contest. So why would they even bother with that? I think we've got Wellington at the moment, right? Who are I can nearly equate New Zealand, and this is going to sound insane, but I can nearly equate the New Zealand situation to the Western Australian situation, given the tack that their state government has taken with COVID, and that's their right. That's what they want to do until they hit their vaccination targets. But why, we've got Wellington here living in Australia permanently to make their fixtures happening. I don't know why Perth can't do the same thing. If Perth is going to be playing 3 times in Victoria, fantastic. That's been arranged for a reason. Why wouldn't you just spend that whole period over here in Victoria? And I'm not saying that this game shouldn't have been in a neutral venue. I think that's fine. But why not just play this game in that as part of that camp with all your players and your ready to go squad? Because this was a pointless fixture. Let's be completely honest. This young Glory team, they conceded inside 38 seconds. How does that benefit anyone?
But to be fair, that was a cracking goal as well. And again, shout out to Perth. They were able to equalise. It was 1-1, went to penalties. Just quickly, the other part of what I was talking about before with, squads. Yep, the Glory, have a tough road in these opening weeks with all that travel and stuff. But, teams play midweek fixtures all the time. If we look at the Championship and the lower leagues in England, they play 46 games a season. They've got midweekers probably 2 a month. You've got cup ties in there, League Cup, FA Cup, even teams in the Premier League, you've got cup ties, and then you've got, the Champions League and the Europa League, and they're all played midweek as well. So it's not a foreign concept to have a bunch of games in a short period of time. Yes, the fixturing probably could have been better, but given COVID and everything, that the impact on this, it's just the squad selection from Perth is super poor. I was disappointed in the fact that they didn't put in a single senior player. Even the Victory, that was not their strongest side, but they still had, Cruz out there. They still had Rojas out there. There was a few more players that were recognisable playing for the VUC. But yeah, Perth, super disappointed in the decisions that they made based on the squad selection, but I thought the actual squad themselves did pretty well.
I think given the amount that they complained about wanting to get the forfeit and that Victory should have forfeited based on them not being able to get in Victoria, to then turn around and put this sort of side out, you just undermined your own point. And now next time you try and make that point and you try and get sympathy from people who want to support you in the tough scenario with borders, you've lost all credibility with that by this is the way that you've kind of approached it. But we'll leave that to one side. Victory go through on penalties 4-3 in that result. They'll go on to play, I think, Western United in another playoff before they head over. We'll check that one in a moment, but we will see how that fixture plays out. We're going to jump into something new, something a little bit different, Brian. It's our Fantasy League review. Now, we're over on Sports Deck doing a Fantasy League. There are still opportunities to join secondary leagues with myself and Brian. If you're interested, let us know on Twitter or in the comment section below. First league is full. We may get another one up. We might also have some interesting head-to-head stuff happening throughout the course of the season. But this is my team, Branson. We're just going to recap quickly. Curtis Good, 19 points, led the way from the back. Getting a sneaky goal for a defender, that is absolutely huge. Good performances back there as well from Nathaniel Atkinson off the bench and Alex Wilkinson as well. Connor Metcalf, 13. He didn't get the goal, which is devastating. It got put down as an own goal. Otherwise, I would have had a very, very lucrative week. And shout out to Kai Goddard, I think is how we're saying it. 10 points from him for the Mariners. Very, very disappointing up front, though. No points at all for Daniel Sturridge coming off the bench. Marco Urena leading the way with his great little assist for Josh Nisbet's goal. 12 points there. Not a bad team, but definitely some players I need to keep an eye on. Max Burgess not starting is something that I'm going to have to keep an eye on. I'm sneakily also looking at Sardiniero. I'm not sure how I pronounce it just yet, but the new Spanish winger that's at Perth Glory. I thought he was quite impressive and is a little bit cheap on the game as well, so we're going to keep an eye on him. And then if Sturridge doesn't start performing, I'm definitely getting Cassini Yangi in my lineup because I think he's going to play for Adelaide each and every week. But hopefully some good stuff there. Brand, do you want to talk us through your lineup and your key performers this week?
Yeah, absolutely. So my team did not perform too well. So one thing that sort of annoys me with fantasy A-League, so when it comes to like Dream Team in the AFL is really good where they like release the squads on Thursday, like they announce all the teams. So with the A-Leagues and A-League men, it's really tricky to find out who's going to play or not. So my squad kind of got undone by one, my strategy, and then two, some of those injuries. So my strategy was go like, stuff the bench. We're going to have no one on the bench. We're just going to go all in on our starting 11. And that backfired week one because I had Donachie in there. My defenders on the bench were Mohamed Al-Tai, who I don't think came off the bench for Newcastle, and Osama Malik, who wasn't even the squad for Glory. So I had no sub options when he wasn't playing. And then I was undone by Josh Brillante, a last minute withdrawal as well. I had Akbari on the bench for Brisbane, but of course Brisbane had already played, so couldn't sub him in. So that was generally unfortunate. Ben Halloran, he was my big performer, 17 points in the midfield. I was hoping for more from Davila and Jamie McLaren. I've had McLaren in my team before. He's going to win the Golden Boot. So I'm like, do you know what? Just play him every week, have him as captain. So didn't get a goal from him, didn't get a goal from Lafondra and Prijovic from Western United, who came off the bench to pick up 2 points. So look, not a great result from my team in week one. I think that's down to the manager. I think he needs to make a few little better decisions. But a couple of interesting trends that I noticed. The goal scorers. That is the big trend on pickups off the waiver wire. Jacob Farrell is the most traded in player at the moment. The Central Coast defender, he scored the winner for the Mariners. Lachlan Rose, he scored for MacArthur. He's number 3. Josh Nisbet, who scored for the Mariners, he's number 4. And Fornaroli is number 5 on the most traded in players. Roderick for the Victory is number 2. The defender for the Melbourne Victory as well. So it'll be interesting here. I'm looking forward to it, seeing how it plays out. Not a great result week one, but yeah, it's good fun already.
Speaking of those results, at the moment, we're going to shout out Michael Ireland, who sits pretty top of the table with just 3 points in his head-to-head contest and the biggest winning margin. You didn't win this week, Bran, but you didn't actually disgrace yourself either. So another 3 points and you'll be right back up the table again. I did win, but by the thinnest of margins. So I'm actually currently sitting in 6th spot in our 12-team competition. You can zoom in on that. You can make it big. Or you can also just join us over on Sports Deck. If you want the link, hit us up on Twitter or in the comment section below. We'll let you know how you can join a secondary division if we're going to get enough teams for it as well. But yeah, very much enjoying Fantasy A-League. We know there's another Fantasy A-League competition coming by way of the APL as well, which we'll keep an eye out. We'll try and bring you guys some updated information for that. More of Brand's secret transfer scoops. I expect him to get 100 points next weekend based on some of those ins and outs that he's seen. But
hang on, just quickly.
Sure.
So secret transfer scoops. My team, the City Slickers, overall rank across Sports Deck 843 out of at least 2,000. At least 1,600. So I'm bang in the middle there.
Yeah, I thought you were about to say out of at least 845 or something like that, because there's only 3 teams below you in our division anyway. But that does take us to the next weekend's fixtures, Branson. We're just going to quickly fire through these, get a little bit of a tip, a little bit of a prediction from everybody. First one up this Friday night at Amy Park, the much maligned Western United home games at Amy Park. Sees them take on Perth Glory. It'll be interesting to see how many minutes Daniel Sturridge gets after his debut last weekend. What are some of your thoughts for these 2 teams?
Well, sorry, very quick, I didn't mean to interrupt. Apparently, Richie Garcia said Sturridge is going to come off the bench again. Not totally unsurprising, but you'd expect, I think he only had, 5 or 10 minutes last weekend, so you would think maybe a little bit more than that. My tip for this one, Perth. I reckon Perth will win. They don't have a ton of excuses, considering that, they benched everyone for their midweek FFA Cup games. So I think they'll win. I think they look more impressive in round one than Western United did.
I'm going to say draw. I think Perth are the better team. Western United, I don't rate Aloisi that highly. We've been through that. I don't think they can. I think they can score, but I don't think they can defend, and I know that Perth can't defend that well. So I'm going to go score draw, maybe 1-1 or 2-2 or something like that. Next one up, though, Wellington versus Central Coast. The Wollongong Fire Chickens make their return to Wynn Stadium on that coast. It'll be very interesting to see how this crowd goes because there's no Mexican Devilla anymore, so that contingent won't be there. But what are some of your thoughts on this match for the two sides leading in?
I'm looking forward to it. Both teams were impressive in round one. I thought Wellington in difficult conditions, again, maybe that favoured them because they're used to playing in Wellington, who knows. But I thought they really held their own against MacArthur and were surprisingly good. Same for the Mariners. They were really good against the Jets as well. So two teams that had promising starts to the season. I'm interested to see which one can carry it on. I would tip the Mariners to win.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Mariners. This will be a fascinating contest because they both play different variations of like a 4-4-2, where Wellington kind of a little bit closer to that Sydney FC 4-2-2-2 with the inverted kind of wingers in the wide areas. But Central Coast a little bit flatter, a little bit harder to break down, more like an Atletico Madrid 4-4-2 from back in the day. I'm going to go with the Mariners as well. I was very impressed with them, and I'm definitely looking at Farrell as someone that I'm going to try and get into my fantasy team this week. So we'll see how that contest goes, but still early days for Wellington. They'll want to try and get 3 points and bounce back, so I expect it to be a hard-fought contest no matter where it is. That one kicks off at 5:05. All these games, of course, available on Paramount Plus and 10play. Next one, though, Adelaide United versus Melbourne City, Cooper Stadium, one of the 7:15 kickoffs. 7:15 Australian Central Time. I always forget about the South Australian time difference during summer. 7:45 on the Eastern Seaboard. A huge contest. Cooper's is one of our favourite away trips of the year. What are your thoughts on this one, Branson, before you lose it into the mic?
Well, I'm pretty sure that Adelaide's half an hour behind us all the time. It's not just a summer, is it?
Is it?
I'm pretty sure it's always. It's Queensland. Queensland that don't do daylight savings, so they go an hour behind. Adelaide is always half an hour behind us.
Well, as you know, French Island's in its little own international pocket, so we're 14 hours behind at all times, and it's always daylight here. It's like Finland.
Also, I don't know why I lost it. I don't know why, of all the things we've done on this podcast, why you just slightly getting the time difference to Adelaide wrong all of a sudden. Anyway, moving on. Didn't mean to make fun of you, mate. This will be a big one. We talked about great crowds that we saw in round one. 8,000 at the Western United game, which was pretty good. I mean, a large portion of that was victory away fans. Let's be absolutely honest. Melbourne City had a good home crowd, 7,000. Bit underwhelming, but was still higher than their average attendance last season. I'm expecting a massive crowd at Coopers. Adelaide United always seem to get, big numbers. They've got a very passionate fan base as well. SAS is back as well. There's a lot of good things going on with Adelaide, taking on Melbourne City. Bit of a rivalry there, I guess. Not as big as the original rivalry, but Melbourne City just suck at Coopers. So expecting a really big crowd here. I'm going to say it's going to be a draw. Melbourne City's away record at Coopers is pretty woeful. I think Adelaide will score first and Jamie McLaren will equalise. That's my prediction.
McLaren doesn't play well against Brisbane traditionally, and he also doesn't play well against Adelaide or at Cooper Stadium. I think it's the stadium in the league where he's got the fewest goals, which is crazy. But I'm actually going to pick an Adelaide win just because I've been to Cooper Stadium four times, and I think I've seen one win during that period. So 4 away trips and 3 defeats isn't great, and some of those defeats are absolutely gut-wrenching, including like FA Cup finals and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to give credit to Adelaide. I think they're a bit of a sleeper team. I think a lot of people are underrating them. I put Brisbane in that category as well. So I'm going to pick the Reds to get 3 points, and City will be absolutely fine. There's no real concerns or issues with that one. It's kind of a semi-Sydney derby again this weekend. Sydney FC fans no doubt livid that they are having to do this back-to-back, but Sydney FC take on MacArthur at Netstrata Jubilee Stadium. It is the other 7:45 Australian Eastern Standard Time. That's plus 12 GMT, brand, if we're going through every time zone for each of these fixtures.
Thank you.
Now, it should be an interesting contest. Sydney FC probably keen to get 3 points. MacArthur definitely keen to get 3 points, given that it is going to be really like a second chance for them to fix that false start from last weekend. What's some of your thoughts heading into the match?
I think there's a lot riding on this for MacArthur, to be honest. One big thing worth mentioning as well, we heard that Luke Braddon is out for the season. He's done an ACL, so he will not feature in this game. That's going to be a pretty darn big loss for Sydney. I don't think their squad depth is incredible. They're sort of very set in their first 11 and they sort of seem to be built around that. So Luke Brun's obviously a very important player. He'd be a very important player to any team in the league. So how are they going to be able to replace him? How are they going to work around it? That's going to be interesting to see. As for MacArthur, though, yeah, there's a lot of pressure on them. They swung and missed against Wellington. If they were to beat Sydney and you go, do you know what? 4 points through our first two games, having played MacArthur and Sydney, you would take that, I think. That would be an acceptable level. But 2 points or 1 point from those two fixtures will be a disappointment. They've had so many big players, so many big signings, join the club. They didn't really show a lot in their opening round game. Again, difficult circumstances, difficult conditions. So as you said, this is a chance for them to push the restart button. I think there's more on the line for MacArthur than Sydney. I think MacArthur win.
Interesting.
I can't believe I said it. I don't know why I said it, but no going back. There we go. No regrets.
Very interesting. For as critical as we've been in MacArthur, I'll give them credit because they're giving free members free entry to this match, and I think they're covering that cost with Sydney FC. So effectively, there's no excuse for MacArthur to not have a great home crowd or not have a great away support, I guess. So I'm assuming we were at Jubilee for the semi-final of last year's season that MacArthur will get one end, Sydney FC will get the other end where the Cove will be based, and hopefully they can get a good crowd for that. I'm still going to pick Sydney FC. I think losing Bratton is huge for them. I think he's their main creative hub in midfield. Shout out to Varpy FM over on Twitter who said, I think now it'll be the time to tell if Callum Neuenhoff is as good as everybody thinks he is.
Good shout. Yeah, good shout.
And he'll come into that lineup and see how he goes. A lot of pressure because I think he's only like 20, but a lot of big raps on him, and he had some great performances last season in limited time. So that'll be fascinating. It'll be interesting to see how Anthony Caceres picks up the additional creative load. But yeah, I think Sydney FC's squad hasn't really gotten out of first gear yet, and I think they'll look to put down a bit of a marker and get themselves some points to keep up with the top of the table. But heading to the next one, it is back in the day a very competitive fixture. Last couple of seasons, maybe not as strong as previous history, but Melbourne Victory taking on Brisbane Roar at Amy Park, the first home game of the season for the men in navy blue. That one kicks off at 4:05 Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Obviously, Branson, a very entertaining fixture when both these teams are clicking into top gear, but what are your expectations given that we are early in the Popovich reign and Brisbane obviously desperate to get 3 points after a defeat last week?
I think it'll be a good clash again. Both teams had positives. The first half in the VUC game against Western United was pretty dour. That's not necessarily their fault, but they look more lively in the second half. As I said, I didn't think guys like Economides, D'Agostino, and Davidson were particularly impactful, but I think they'll make more of an impact this week. They've got another game under their belt, so I think that will benefit the victory. I'm gonna pick Brisbane because I was very impressed by the way that they played against Melbourne City. Again, I thought defending in the first half under a lot of pressure, I thought they were pretty resolute, unlucky to cop 2 goals, I thought. And then in the second half, they were really able to kick it up a gear and really look very dangerous and really challenge City. I don't think the Victory face that same sort of pressure against Western United. I think Brisbane will win this one 2-1. I think the VUC will look good. I think Brisbane will just look a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a draw because I think Victory and their home support will be massive. Like they always are. They're very well supported.
They're going to have a huge crowd. And, there was 7,000 people at the Melbourne City Brisbane game, opening game of the season, first home game for the champs. And easily the Victory are going to double it.
Easily. And Sunday afternoon kickoffs, they're good for families, 4 o'clock local time. Like, that's a great time to get family and support along. So if you are thinking about it, go and check it out. But I think Brisbane are a bit underrated. I think they made a good tactical change where they went from like that 5-2-3 that they were playing in the first half and getting beaten quite convincingly to like a 3-4-3 in the second half. And they were excellent. And there's very few teams in the league that I think can keep up with that tactical kind of familiarity and ability to adjust on the fly. So I think they'll be good. I think Luka Vandic will start ahead of Cyrus Demi this week because he was a handful when he came on. I don't know if Lascano's back yet. I don't know if Tom Aldred's back yet. but that's just like icing on the cake as far as Brisbane are concerned. I think they're going to be very, very competitive this season. So I'm going to tip a draw in this one, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised with either team winning it. It's going to be a great battle. We head to the last game of the round, though. Western Sydney Wanderers taking on the Newcastle Jets at CommBank Stadium. You've, of course, been at CommBank recently for the Australian matches, so you know it inside and out at this point. A big, big fixture. Newcastle, of course, not getting the win last week in the F3 Derby. Western Sydney only managing a draw in their Sydney Derby. What are you expecting for the contest?
I'm expecting Western Sydney to win. Again, similar to the MacArthur game, where I said there's a lot more pressure on MacArthur to win than Sydney. There's a lot more pressure on Western United than the Jets. Western Sydney than the Jets. They want to be a top 6 team. It's top 6 or bust for them. So Newcastle Jets at home is a fixture that they have to be winning. Again, if they get 4 points from their first 2 games, they'd look at that and they'd go, yeah, great, cool. But if it's only 2 or even 1, that's a very disappointing start. And then, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball, pressure builds. Again, it's only week 1, week 2, whatever. But you want to start well. So I think Western Sydney will win. I'm not writing the Jets off completely. Again, I thought they looked really good in week 1. I can't remember his name. The striker they got from Georgia, the Georgian international. What's
Mikkel
his name? Sorry?
Mikkel Tardze?
Yeah, he looked really good against the Mariners too. I think he hit the post. He had another shot that went just over the bar. He was very impressive. Pena was, again, good for the Jets. So I don't think it's going to be an easy Western Sydney victory by any stretch of the imagination, but I still think that they're a better side. They should get up. But if they're not on, I mean, the Jets could take it to them.
This is why the A-League's the best league in the world, because we've gone through all these contests and all of them could go either way, or all of them could be draws. Like, it's the toughest league in the world to try and pick stuff. I'm going to go with Newcastle. I just didn't see... They are my upset, and it won't be expected, but I'm going to go with Newcastle to win. I didn't see it, and I know it's a derby in round 1, and we kind of talked about that not being ideal preparation. For me, Western Sydney last week are just doing the same... last week, they're just doing the same tactic and playing style as last season, but with new players. And that's really the change. I don't think Carl Robinson's changed anything in terms of how he's setting up, about how he wants the team to play. I think that's all identical. He's just gotten some new, maybe shinier, better parts in likes of Reece Williams and Dimi Petratos and Antonis, and that's where they've changed. So I still think Newcastle are going to do them. And I think Papas gets his first result. I think they'll start to get a little bit of hype out of Newcastle early on in the season, like we did last year, and then they'll kind of fade like they did last season as well. Because again, their depth isn't fantastic outside their starting 11, but the couple of players that you mentioned, Matt German, I think, is an excellent player, and he'll relish being back at CommBank or Bankwest or whatever it was when he was playing there back in the day. And Jordan Elsey, I think, is also a great pickup for them. So Newcastle are going to pick up points at some point, and I think they're going to start this weekend. But it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out. That one kicks off at 6:15 Australian Eastern Daylight Time. So some fantastic back-to-back fixtures there to close out the weekend. Should be an absolute cracker. But Branson, unfortunately, that brings us to an end for another week. It's been fantastic talking football with you, as always. If people want to check out more of your content, or if you've got any shout-outs that you want to give, what would you like to say?
You can just hit me up on Twitter at Branson Gibson. And big shout-out I just want to give is to all the people who did go to games in round 1, because we did see, some bumper crowds across the league. Hopefully, as more teams this weekend play their home opener as well, we see those crowd figures replicated again. But yeah, I would just encourage as many people to go as possible, because from what we saw in week 1, there was quality games across the league. So it's definitely worth watching. We make the atmosphere, like there was a sellout at Perth. It was a great atmosphere. There was a bunch of away fans in Geelong who travelled down, Victory away fans, sorry. And again, that created a pretty darn good atmosphere. So get out to games, make it as good as we can. But yeah, that would be my shout out, mate.
Yeah, and I'd echo that. And hopefully, like we said at the start, it was a little bit weird being in Amy Park without a mask on and being able to do what we want. Hopefully that will start to return to normal and people get more and more comfortable going to a stadium again. So yeah, by all means, get out, support your teams, and check out what is, I think, and you think, and we all think together, the best league in the world, because it's absolutely fantastic stuff. But that does bring us an end to another week. If you want to support us further, please subscribe to the channel. Drop a like on this video if you enjoyed the content. If you're listening over on Spotify, subscribe just to be kept up to date on future episodes as they release. You can can support us on Patreon as well. Just $1 a month gets you a chance to win a fantastic French Island football kit, which we're going to draw in a couple of weeks' time. But more than anything, from myself, from Branson, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all again on the island.